I posted what we were talking about in the various singing call figures that we were playing with for a few different movements into the chat, so feel free to copy them. I do give you a warning. You'll see a lot of them that say swing corner and promenade, or we'll take a little bit short or a little bit long, because we had the discussion of how we would actually end that. If it's short, we might have had a pass through and swing your corner or a couple of alternate endings, but the meat of the choreography is there. So before you start using it, make sure you walk it through and play with it a bit. Mark. Hello, Mark. Big hi to Mark Hart, who is our technical guru and genius extraordinaire who posts everything on to the OC Callers website. He has been furiously updating a lot of stuff that's been coming in post-chat. Notes, Brian, your notes from the 6-couple choreography stuff, I've sent those up to Mark. Those have been posted up there as well. And then there's a lot of other material, so thank you very much for that. That was a very interesting session last week on 6-couple choreography and working in rectangles, and it really went over well. There's been a lot of interest in that. Today, what we are going to be talking about is matching patter calls to singing calls. So I'm just going to share my screen and try and go through this. Where are we here? Whoops, wrong screen.
Hey, Mel.
Yep.
I'm not going to be able to be here for much longer than 10, 15 minutes. So you might want to make somebody else a co-host to watch the door after I leave.
No worries.
The wife wants to go dancing tonight, so we're going dancing.
Okay. Are you leaving your computer on to record?
Yes.
Okay. No worries. 2 people are in the waiting room. Okay, so what we're going to be talking about today is matching singing calls to the patter calls. And we're not just talking about music, we're talking about the choreography and the dancing. So when we look at this, a tip is generally made of 3 separate components. You've got the music, you've got the choreography, and you've got the dancing. And on this little square, what you see here is a patter call and a singing call. So you've got your patter call, which is all this choreography at the bottom, going around and around and around with the music. And then you've got your singing call. This is where the dancers react and relax. And within that singing call, you've got a little bit of the choreography that's carried over from the patter call. And that's what really the tie is. And the music that you choose is essentially the foundation. I've got people coming in here again. Okay, not getting a doorbell. Is essentially the foundation that you're building on. It's what kind of cake you're going to make. Is it going to be a light and airy angel food cake, or is it going to be a mixed up fruit cake, or is it going to be a flat square cake of moist chocolate brownies? That's what your music is. It's what engages all the senses and the smells and the ingredients separately, and it gives you the taste of each one before you steal it and then put it into one special thing. And people will look at that, and each of those ingredients that make up that cake is like stealing a piece of chocolate before it's all mixed together. Your choreography is the right mix of ingredients that go into laying and binding that foundation together. And if you look at it in that kind of a concept, essentially what you're talking about is all those ingredients, you're going to put them together just the way they should be to build something that's going to be solid, it's going to grow, and it's going to make a foundation that is going to be built upon, and you can eat it by yourself. It's good, it's sustainable, it's whole. And sometimes it's just a chocolate, like a deep moist chocolate fudge brownie, and other times it's several layers bound together by a single theme that goes through it, the jam between them. And all of this is overshadowed by the decorations on the cake, the frosting or the icing. That's your singing call. Okay, and what that does, that sweetens the whole thing. It gives you a visual picture of this, wow. And that's also what leaves the memory of how delicious that cake was, because it engages the eyes. And this is what the singing call, it's decoration, it gauges the sight, it wraps the smells and desires and focuses the mind and the memory on the whole picture of what that cake is. And a good singing call and a good frosting, if you will, can do the same thing. It will set the memory of what that entire experience was about, the entire tip, the music that was chosen, the pattern, the choreographic, the draws, the ties in, and it's a feast. So we used to call singing calls the icing on the cake, but it's just icing, but it's a very important icing, and it has to match the rest of the cake. You can have the greatest icing you want. If your cake is absolute garbage, i.e. I made it, then it doesn't matter how good it looks, it's not going to taste well. Okay. Now today, while we still consider the singing calls as the relaxing part of the evening, they play a more dominant role in a program. And sometimes they're as unpredictable as patter calls. I personally don't like that. I like a little bit of interest, a little bit of intrigue, and a little bit of binding with the patter call, but I don't like singing calls where every figure is different. I don't like singing calls where you're basically doing a patter call to a strong melody line. To me, that's not what a singing call is. It's something to relax and reward the dancers. And this was written over 40 years ago. In my opinion, it's still as important today as it was then. Now, you're probably wondering why I'm spending so much time talking about singing calls. Primarily because until you get to either A2 or in some place challenge dancing, singing calls are only what the dancers really remember. The choreography is only remembered by callers usually, and dancers will only remember it when it doesn't support the music, it doesn't support the singing call, it has not been introduced in some form in the pattern, and therefore it's unfamiliar, or worse, it simply doesn't work. That's when dancers remember your pattern. So it's important to understand the key differences between pattern and singing calls. And it's not just technical knowledge, but it's important to understand the difference, what the differences are, and how to make use of that knowledge so they can both be mutually supportive of each other. So when you talk pattern on the left, we're talking the cake and the foundation and the choreography and whatnot. It begins and ends at the whim of the caller. You've usually got a short intro, but where that caller wants to start each sequence, where he wants to end it, or she, is entirely up to the caller. You're very, okay, in a singing call, it's structured. Your musical phrasing constrains where and when you're going to use specific choreography. And you've got a tagline at the end to say, that's the end of this sequence, okay, now relax and get home. You're very seldom able to predict what the caller is going to be calling in a pattern call. What is the exact choreographic arrangement? There will be similarities, but it's not going to be fixed and rigid as it is in a singing call. Singing calls have limited phrasing and restricted choreography. Patter calls are reusable. You're going to use that same patter record a dozen times, and the dancers aren't going to remember it's the same patter record. They are going to remember that it's familiar to them, it's comfortable to them, it's got a good beat, but they really don't care about it. It's reusable. Whereas a singing call, you put that singing call on, they know what the singing call is, they know what the melody line is, and they're ready. You may change the choreography a bit, but they're going to be ready for that singing call. Patter calls are generally free and unstructured. Singing calls are highly structured formations. An opener, 2 figures, a break, 2 figures, a close. Okay, and that's what the dancers expect. They expect that
Mel?
corner progression. Yeah.
Is this a pentagon?
Sorry?
You got 5 figures in there.
I've got 2 figures in there. An opener, figure 1, figure 2. Oh.
That's a combination of a 6-couple and a 4-couple set.
I had an extra couple sneak onto the floor when I wasn't looking.
Right.
Good catch. Okay. In pattern calls, your dancer concentration is focused on the choreography more than music. And that's an important thing with pattern, because that music is absolutely critical in a pattern. That rhythm is critical in a pattern. That beat is critical in a pattern. But the dancer's concentration isn't on the music. It's on the choreography, getting through it and moving with it, or it should be anyway. In a singing call, dancers aren't focused as much on the choreography as they are in the pattern. If you look at an easy outgoing dance, like take one of your big major festivals where they're having the dance, watch the pattern, watch the singing calls, and you'll find that dancers will break down less in a singing call if the singing call is tied to the pattern. If callers use singing calls that have interesting and intriguing choreography and it's a big show, but there's no tie, dancers will break down more in the singing call than they will in the patter call. It's an interesting thing to watch. So have a look at it. And finally, the music and the choreography is generally not remembered by the dancers unless it's bad. That's where they'll remember your pattern. And that's hard to recover from. In singing calls, dancers remember the song and they're often humming or singing along with you. And that's what you want to achieve. So those are key differences. And those differences are important because they highlight what you can do and make what you can take advantage of. So when you think about it, your music has a primary purpose, and that's all square dance music is to provide the basic rhythm and the melodic background that makes it possible for the dancers to dance, the caller to call, both singing calls and patter calls. And both of the music are structured to meet that requirement. So what we have to do is we have to ask the question, why should they support each other? You know, why can't you have a different patter call and a different singing call that have nothing in common? Well, you know, why don't you put hamburger in a trifle? It's the same kind of principle. It just doesn't work unless they have a contrast, but they're of the same kind of theme that's going to pull through and bring your senses together with a reward. So why they need to be supportive of each other is hoedowns are generally repetitive and not remembered, but they have to have a tie, that melodic memory. That repetition becomes boring from a dancer's perspective, and then they don't want to remember it. Their focus is primarily on the choreography and their dancing. But when that choreography is introduced successfully in a pattern, such as a focus movement or idea, and is brought forward to tie to the singing calls become extremely varied and diverse. And that provides flavor and style to the dance, giving all those essential ingredients to the caller's program. You've got variety of music, you've got melodies, you've got rhythms that are going to vast and contrast, and you can structure them around the theme. You can use slow music, fast music, even though it's all got the same beat, it'll feel different, and it gives that whole different essence. You're providing contrast for the musical balance. You're providing a showmanship platform for the caller with the singing call, and using what you did in the patter to set that up with the choreography and the type of music you're using, the contrast, the easygoing or the fast or the belted out show tune, whatever you want. Singing calls are going to act as your mood meter, but also importantly, they can act as a repair kit when you whenever you need it. If you do a pattern that's really, really hot and heavy or dangerous or having technical difficulty, but get through it and don't feel that great about it, you can do a really good singing call to pick them up and make them feel good successfully doing a simpler version. They know what you were looking at, but they've got success on that focus. So what you're actually doing is you're seeding a positive memory of success in both the patter call and the singing call, and the singing call is being used as a mnemonic tune to keep that memory alive. That's what you want to do. When the patter music is complementary but contrasting, the choreographic focus of the patter is carried successfully through the singing call, and the choice of the singing call enhances that dancer memory. That way, the tip brings color, flavor, and personality to an evening's program. The dancers remember it, even though they will generally only remember the song, the singing call song. They associate the whole thing to a positive memory, and that's why they have to complement each other. To really understand this, you have to have just a bit of basics of musical construction. Now, I'm going to go through these quickly, but the notes that are going to be available on the website are going to have a lot more detail in them. Singing calls are generally simple, and they consist of two parts. They've got a predictable theme, and they've got a melody line, a predictable theme or melody line, and then they've got a chorus, and that chorus is the 64-beat phrasing. So you got the eight-beat lines that you have in each phrase, and that's repeated 7 times, or there's a variation of it with 7 times. By contrast, most patter calls are relatively complex in their construction, but they're repetitive in their phrasing. They've got breaks and intonations that repeat the sequence, and the harmonics are very different, and they're placed differently than they are in singing calls. The instrumentation is often a building blend of supporting instruments. And so if you start with a guitar and you've got a glockenspiel as the next one. The next phrase is going to have the glockenspiel as the lead, and it'll have a different instrument. It might be a horn, and the next one will have the horn, and then it'll go back to the guitar. You know, the supporting instrument in one group usually becomes the lead instrument in the next. Now that's coming out a lot more in singing calls, but it's very, very common in patter calls, and it gives you an idea of what to look for. That said, it's the similarities between patter and singing calls that really make and really matter, matching them for the best efficacy, the best efficiency, and more importantly, the best dancer's outcomes. And there's a typo in that one too. So if we look at rhythm, rhythmically, singing calls and patter calls are very, very similar. Okay. Take the melody line, the strong melody line out, and just look at the rhythm. And they're usually played in 2/4 or 4/4 time. There are exceptions. You know, you've got some Latino, you've got some jig, you've got some rumba beat or waltz beats, but they're overshadowed with a modification to make them either feel or actually change to a 2/4 or a 4/4 in rhythm. And that's the best type of rhythm for square dance music. How the music is arranged is also very important, okay? Both patter and singing calls consist of 3 basic figures. You've got the pickup phrase, the melody or the rhythmic repetition of the music, and you've got the closing phrase, okay? And in the pickup phrase, in singing calls, it's a short 8 to 16 beat introductory phrase that sets the mood for the dancers. It tells the caller what key it is. It lets the dancers identify with it. And it establishes a mood and personality of the song. You know, if you got a ballad coming, you know, if you got a show tune, you know, if you got a, wow, I better get my, you know, my legs in gear and my feet shuffling and my toes tapping. It's a very effective tool in preparing and adjusting an evening's program. So you want to match your pattern to your singing call. You don't want to have hot, 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 hot all the way through. You want to have that contrast, a little bit relaxed with a pickup, or a big wow in the pattern and a relaxed singing call that makes use of what you've done. You've got the melody of the song. Singing call music is essentially background music. It serves to accompany the caller's voice. It must support the caller rather than compete with the caller. The best singing calls usually feature a musical arrangement that's simple and unobtrusive. The song doesn't highlight any fancy solos or instrumentals that are going to be in competition with the caller or the caller's choreographic matrix or his delivery. Patter calls often, however, have an instrumental highlight, but the good ones don't place the caller in a fight with the musicians. And that's what you really need to look at. Now, saying that, there are some singing calls that have a highlighted instrumental. There's some singing calls that you just want to call the choreography and let the music carry you through, or they've got specific real hard solos in the breaks, like Rockin' in Rosalie's Boat, where you've got the drum solo in there. It's designed specifically for that. You don't compete with those. And you notice callers don't call on those. They let the music carry it. Okay. Now, it doesn't mean that either a patter call or a singing call is routine or dull. Most feature numerous devices that the caller can use to emphasize his or her show. And those would be things like the neutral phrasing, emphasizing taglines and singing calls, key breaks, modulations. You know, those are always up. The musical breaks, like we just talked about, or the vocal accompaniment or harmony that might be on the song or when you're working with another caller. All of these things are used to help the caller call, but to emphasize and highlight the show while giving the dancers time to relax to a familiar or at least a recognizable melody. That's what the right and left grand and the weave the ring and the promenade is in the patter. You know, they're not going to do it, but that's why it's also very, very important to give them that in the singing call. That's their reward. Give them the reward. Okay. And finally, you've got the closing phrase. Now, traditionally, that's an 8 to 16 beat coda or closing phrase, if you will, at the end of a singing call, the tagline. And then in patter, however, there's usually an instrumental indicator or a key change at about the 32 beat mark before the ending. And you'll hear that, you'll pick it up once you start listening for it. And what that basically says is you're running out of music, it's time to wrap up. You've got 32 beats, you've got a grand square worth of time to get them home before that, or you're going to have to reset the record. Okay, and I made a note on key changes. Just remember, key changes are always up. When we talk about structure, singing calls are very, very choreographically structured. Patter calls are not. And although the patter music is structured, For newer callers and experienced callers, it's a good idea to maintain mixed lengths of choreographic flow sequences in your pattern. But also, it's very important to give the dancers a reward, like a promenade or a right and left grand. If everything you do is Allemande left, you're home. Slide through, you're home. Square through 3, bow to the corner, you're home. If everything is like that, a surprise ending, nothing is a surprise. It doesn't work. Dancers get tired of it very, very quickly. Okay, you got to have a mix and match of choreography in the patter call, and then you've got to bring that into the singing call. This may just be a movement, or it may be music, a musical theme, such as, Moonlight or Pirates or something like that, that draws these two together. But remember, if there is a certain familiarity from the patter to the singing call, there's comfort. And with comfort usually comes success. And with success comes a good memory. And that's what you want. The focus movement, the theme of your calling, if you can't theme with the music, then theme with your choreography. But choreography is the easiest way to do this. A focus movement in your patter brought forward into your singing call ties the whole thing together. So we talk about matching the singing call to the patter call, or the patter call to the singing call. Essentially, although this looks very, very complicated, it's really just a 3-step process. So just to explain this side, you've got your caller here, you've got your dancers dancing, and you've got something that's coming through all the time. Most of the time, you've got little bits and pieces around, but you notice you've got this symbol popping up everywhere. And it's just a little bit different how we got there, but the symbol is very consistent. There's an easy use, a little different. Notice the big ones are the use that I'm focused on. But there's a couple of little things to introduce things. I might do boy, boy, girl, girl, swing through. I might do boy, girl, girl, boy. I might start in a left-hand wave and do swing through, just variations. But when I get them through the patter call successfully, I take that same theme, there's the successful movement that's being focused on, and I'm going to use it in the singing call choreographically. That way the dancers have explored it, but they get a reward to use it successfully. The 3 steps are selection. You've got to choose the right call. What choreographic feature are you going to use, and does it fit both the patter call and the singing call? Because it's important to realize that not all movements fit all music. Not all choreographic sequences fit all music. You have to make sure that they fit both the patter call and the singing call. The second one is adaptation. That's preparing and practicing the call. Make sure that your singing call choice is right. My way of doing it is do that first. If you're preparing, choose your singing call, choose your focus movement, then make sure your singing call choice for that movement works and your choreography works for your singing call. The reason I say that is this allows you to focus your attention on developing the patter choreography and the choice of complementary music to the singing call that you've chosen to highlight that feature. Most choreographic work is done in the patter. Most dancer work is done in the patter. Practice the patter with your focus. Practice lots of different ways of getting there, but all with a theme. And the third step is your presentation. That's actually calling the tip or the bracket. You've got calling the call. You've got to practice the singing call. When you're done practicing the singing call, practice the patter with the focus material, including a slightly easier version of the focus to ensure success. So if you're using spin the top, you want to have some of your modules or some of the things that you prepare that are easy, some that have a little bit of your focus on it. Okay. Then you want to practice the complete tip, the patter call and the singing call. And then you want to do it some more. And then you want to do it some more. And you want to play with it. Each of those phases is as important as the next, and you've got to follow through with it to ensure success. So in choosing the right music, what you're actually doing is you're saying, hi, dancers, this is me. This is my personal choice. This is a glimpse into my personal tastes, my personal preferences, and my professional individuality. You're opening yourself up to the dancers with the music you choose, and that says a lot about you. So what it really means and what you do, you've got to review the dance to see if it fits your dancing level. Okay? Do you have to modify it? you're going to begin to rephrase it to suit your own preference, your own choreography. And this gives you a lot of flexibility in both your patter call and your singing call. The choreography, believe it or not, is one of the lesser important things in giving that presentation. It's very important that it works and that you've got an idea to tie it all together. But your choreography is not really what they'll remember. They'll remember a little bit of different, but they're not going to remember difficult unless it doesn't work. If it works, they'll say, wow, that was good. That was good variety. And then you go on to something else. They're going to remember your choreographic quality. Okay, you've got to review it and consider the quality of both the pattern music and the singing call with an emphasis on smooth body flow, timing, logical sequencing, and danceability. Danceability is extremely important, and it's especially important that the success is matched and carried forward from the pattern to the singing call. So to do that, just ask yourself if the choreographic sequence has natural and comfortable body mechanics. Am I doing right and left through, square through, star through? Oops, right hand, it doesn't feel comfortable. Or am I doing a right and left through, slide through, star through? Oh, wait a minute. There's the no hands in the hands. That's a little more comfortable. You got to ask, does it keep the dancers involved or does it goalpost the inactive dancers? You know, have I got one couple just running around, a couple of inactive dancers that do 2 or 3 movements in the sequence? In answering these questions, you got to put your own personal judgment on the line. Remember, it all boils down to the dancers because they are your jury. And the singing calls are what they'll remember you by. And the best singing calls are those of a combination of interesting and familiar movements, not level, but interesting and familiar movements, even in a slightly different arrangement, but they still maintain that smooth, everybody dancing choreography that you brought forward from the pattern. And the best way of doing it is bring it forward from the pattern to the singing call. Now, it's important that you find your own way through the music. Okay, remember that patter calls and singing calls, although they have a lot of technical stuff in common, they're 2 very different beasties. But those 2 beasties are what make a successful tip or a successful bracket. Bracket is the Australian word for a tip. Okay, and practice is the best way of personalizing both your patter call and your singing call. Now, these are important things to remember. Singing calls generally rhyme. You don't have to do that work. Okay, the lyrics of the song are doing the work for you. So your focus there is good, smooth dancing, a good melodic line, and a good delivery. You want to engage the dancers and give them that memory. To do that, make it good. Make that singing call yours. The same principle applies for patter. However, the focus in patter is on the choreography, not the lyrics. Concentrate on the choreography first and the rhyming delivery of smooth danceable choreography later, or not at all. The only advice I can give you there is never force bad choreography or bad delivery for the sake of a good rhyme. Okay, you hear callers go head square through and muddle in the middle to the tune of the fiddle. Okay, there's a nice little rhyme that works with the metering of the beat. But if you've got the wrong kind of pattern music, you can't go head to square through and into the middle you go, you do the right and left through and turn that girl around with you. And oh, wait a minute, that rhymes, but I've only given 8 beats for a square through from a static square. That's 12 beats. And the rhyme is good, the beat is good, but it just doesn't work. Don't force bad choreography or bad delivery just to get the rhyme. Find your own way through. And it's you that they want. You were the one hired for the dance. You are the one up there that's been asked to call a tip. You're the one that's been asked to call a guest tip. If they wanted me, they would have hired me. If they wanted Brian Hotchkiss, they would have hired Brian Hotchkiss. You're the one behind the mic. So you're the one that has to say, this is me. And that is only done with hard work and a lot of practice and being yourself successfully. It takes a lot of hard work to be yourself. So when you put it all together, you've got a long time of some painful preparation, but it's your package of the patter call and the singing call that you're going to give to the dancers. So you've got 2 basic fundamentals: when to call that prepared tip and how to call that prepared tip. So we're looking at an evening program, not necessarily a guest tip, but the principles apply. As a new caller, that choice is probably going to be taken away from you, so don't sweat it, okay? However, if you're calling for a whole evening, it's important that you plan the whole evening out. The variety and ability of singing calls to affect the floor and affect the mood with style and flavor is one of the most versatile and powerful programming tools that a caller has in the repertoire. Your pattern must complement the singing call and not overshadow it. Usually a contrast is an effective method, but there are other considerations, different styles of music or music themes. Build your choice of pattern music by considering your singing calls. Make sure you listen to both. Don't just choose a pattern call at random because you like it. You've got to associate each to accompanying pattern in music and content for the effect that you want to achieve. How and what you present's got to blend, and where you put it in the evening is so that you can have that building, escalating staircase of wow, of I'm feeling better all night long. I'm getting a little tired, but I still feel like I want to go. Okay? You want to complement your pattern and reflect the song message and mood that you want to achieve for the dancers. And you do that by delivering a good pattern, tying it, and then delivering a singing call that says, I'm successful. I'm good at what I do. And it doesn't matter if you're on night 1 or you're at, year 47. That's a long dance. You still want to achieve the same thing every bracket or every tip. So some possible examples of this, if I'm workshopping a brand new figure, like we were talking about split circulate at the beginning, I might use a whole bunch of interesting choreography. Well, when I'm going to do a singing call and I want to use split circulate in my singing call, because the dancers dancing probably know what my focus is because they've danced it. I want to have a use of that call in the singing call figure. If I'm using heavy trades and circulate flows and wow, bang, 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 I might consider a contrast in the choreography using circle and star patterns, but I'll have the circulates and that pattern in there to give me that little bit of contrast, but still have that flow around and inside and outside. If I'm using a non-melodic heavy rhythm music, my singing call could be a very strong melody that the dancers know. There's a lot of old songs. If I'm using a non-melodic and a very heavy rhythm oriented, I'm probably doing something really, really funky and fast in my pattern call. I want the dancers to have something that they can relax. And usually a song, we've all got one of those songs that you put it on and every dancer sings to, like Somewhere Over the Rainbow or something. You want something with a strong melody line. If I'm doing complex hash with really, really intricate routines, my singing call is going to have some of those choreographic sequence flows in there, but it's going to be more relaxed and lazy, and the music's going to be more relaxed and lazy to allow those dancers to come back to earth gently. I brought them way up, but now I'm going to deliver a wow to just let them de-escalate and still feel good about themselves. Those are the kinds of things you have to take into account when you're planning your pattern music, your pattern choreography, your singing call music, and your singing call choreography. Those are the cake as a whole. That's all bound together that says, wow, that's good. I want to look at that. Now I want to cut into that. I want to eat that. Give me another slice. Okay. Just as a note on singing calls are generally choreographically less demanding than pattern. Okay, the figure is usually written and it's fixed. It's been checked for smoothness and success, and it's been practiced so many times that you got. It's a great memory wiper. If you have a pattern that's a real drive and a hard drive or difficult for the dancers, you can wipe that bad memory or that not so sure memory by doing something that's going to complement and wow them with the singing call that gives them that feeling of success. I've done spin chain through from archy inverted, really weird positions. Well, I'll give them a normal spin chain through they're comfortable with. They'll recognize the familiarity of the movement, but they get through it successfully in the singing call, and the music's so good they just go, that wasn't so bad. I thought I didn't get it, but I did. You've got to program both the pattern and the singing call to set those moods. Sometimes you got to let something that's going to tie the pattern to the singing call and allow the singing call to accompany it. It's trying to find a way to say that. Your pattern records, think of them like steps. You want the pattern record is the flat step. The singing call is what takes you up. The patter call is the flat step. The singing call is what takes you up. But if you look at what's going up the step, it's a flat piece of wood. That's your patter. So it wants to go like that, and it sets the mood. And along the way, you've got little landings. So when you do this kind of stuff, plan your workshop choreography and music for both patter and singing calls. Your workshop is based on rhythm. It's neutral. That's your workshop pattern. If you do something like that, have a really good singing call ready to use that choreography and make it complement. Big flow moves. If you've got big flow moves like spin, chain, and exchange the gears, or 8 chain 6, or spin, chain through, or big star movements, okay? You want to use a ballad type movement that gives them time, and the music will carry them through that. If you use difficult material, you want to use a relaxing song. If you've got short, snappy choreography, use a lively pickup, but not too hard driving. I think you get the idea of what I'm saying on that. You got to find that balance of musical styles for both patter and singing calls. But you've always got to keep in the back of your mind that the dancers are going to remember some, but not all of the singing calls. Not all dancers will remember the same singing calls. They will not remember the patter choreography. They will not remember the patter music. But when it's all tied together with a theme, what they will remember is the experience. And that 1 or 2 singing calls that you do that tied it all together is what's going to keep that experience alive to them. And that's what will keep them coming back to you. Okay. There are a few cautions on this. Guest tips and multicolor programs. Okay. In the case of being asked to do a guest tip, or if you're on a multicolor program, such as, you know, a convention or something like that, you want to have your best foot forward and you want to have a solid wow performance. Okay. Personally, I recommend if you know you're going to be asked to do a tip, hopefully you've been given some advance notice. I would always recommend you have 2 or even 3 different types prepared, different styles of music, a different pattern, a different singing call. The reason is the host caller may have already done the song that you prepared. Oh, you didn't know that he was going to do that. He just asked you to do a tip, but didn't tell you what music it was. It also allows you, if he's going up and you need to get a balance there, it allows you to complement that caller's evening program structure with either an upbeat or a relaxing song rather than conflict with the caller's program. And that just makes you look better. It makes the whole evening look better. It makes the experience, okay? Never upstage your host, okay? Do a good job. But if your host is just on a wow, fantastic tip, but he or she is only a mediocre singer, okay, the dancers know this and they're there to dance to him or her, okay? Your tip should reflect and complement. I'm not saying don't do a bad singing call, but don't do that wow to make that other caller say, well, this guy's a really good singer. Our caller's not so good. I'm not sure I want to go there anymore. You know, you don't want to give all icing. You want to have good, solid choreography that's a little bit easier than your host's choreography. And you want to give a good singing call delivery. This will complement the evening. It'll highlight your skill and ability, but it'll make them want to come to your dance. And it'll also encourage your host to welcome you back because you made him or her look good. Okay. Think of your exceptions, you know, a guest or a festival. You know, if you think of it in terms of food or drink, conventions or festivals, these multi-function caller things, they're like a potluck. You bring your best dish to share with everybody. They all get a taste, but the meal's just a little bit of everything. You want them to remember your dish, but more importantly, you want them to remember that event. Okay. Visiting callers. If you've been invited to do a guest tip, think of it like going to a fancy dinner or something. And the caller or the host says, oh, you don't have to bring anything. Well, of course, you know, you have to bring something. You're going to bring a tip as a square dance caller or as a guest to a fancy meal. You're going to bring something like a bottle of wine. It may or may not get served, but regardless, if it's open for drinks afterwards, if you come there and you've got this, you know, $800 bottle of wow wine, that's what people are going to be remembering. That's just taken away from everything that your host has done, the meal they prepared, all this other kind of stuff. If you go out and you buy one of those really fancy store-bought desserts, that's what they remember, the wow and everything else. And the host that spent all day slaving in the kitchen and making the pies and making the turkey and making this big meal is overshadowed by what you've done. You do not want to do that as a guest caller. You want to give a good, solid performance that has the patter call tied to the singing call. The music complements each other and it fits into an evening program. Now, here's another thing. Many callers, especially a lot of newbies, are not able to do a decent patter call, but are fantastic singing call presenters. Okay. I'm going to give this advice for new callers and for experienced callers. Experienced callers, insist that new callers do a patter call and singing calls. If they're not able to do that, then they're not ready to present an entire bracket. Getting up there and doing 2 singing calls, you may as well be doing karaoke as far as I'm concerned. If you're going to do a patter call and a singing call, great. If necessary, get up and share the stage with them on the patter call and help them out. Let them do it, because they have to be able to do both to make that whole meal. They have to do both to make that whole cake. The reason for this is you have to look at it from a dancer's perspective. Dancers remember the experience. The trigger for that memory is the singing call. And if they've got a decent dance going and you're out there and this caller comes up and does a fantastic singing call as a guest caller, dancers remember that singing call with no association to the choreographic ability. They remember the look of the cake. They remember the window, how it made them feel. They remember the icing, but essentially it's just icing on cardboard and you've stolen all the rest of it from somebody else's cake. It's like seeing this big wedding cake and getting a piece of fruit cake from, you bought at Woolworths, all chopped up in little Christmas pieces. Okay, all the ingredients there, but they haven't been put together. And what you're buying is a lot of icing with no cake to support it. What happens is too much sugar kills. Don't let someone else ruin that whole meal that you worked for just by bringing that expensive bottle of wine or the store-bought dessert. Short, sweet mouthfuls, great, but make them earn that place of pride. Okay, as a final note, old or new. There's a trend for everybody to get on the bandwagon of new music. People are downloading karaoke tracks. People are modifying this, that, and everything else for both patter calls and singing calls. And they've got the person singing in the background and all this other kind of stuff. While there is some phenomenal music entering into the square dance market today, don't sell things short just because they're dated. Good classics and old favorites in both patter and singing call are just as popular today as they were when they came out. Okay, one of my favorite singing calls, Ghost Riders in the Sky, is 73 years old. It's written in 1948, and I still get requests for it. One of my favorite patters that is really liked by the dancers and it ties well is called Smooth and Easy. That's 42 years old and it's still as popular today. Okay, so remember, Bob Antwerp wrote this little quote in 1969, and that's every week he brings back 1 or 2 of the oldies. We've all got those oldies in our record box or on our MP3 or on our computer. Don't sell them short. Get new music. Get good music. Good music is better than new music. Okay? They don't have to be synonymous with each other. Some new music is good, some old music is good. Some new music is terrible, some old music is absolutely terrible. Don't judge the music by its age. Judge it by the music itself. Does it do what you want to do? And can you tie it together? So that is pretty much what I've got to say on the tie. I want to use the rest of the time. I'll answer any questions that anybody has, or if anybody wants to open it up for discussion. I'm just looking here from Brian. I have dancers request a particular patter instrumental which they enjoy, and that's good. That shows that you've got a choice of music. You can vary your patter, but when dancers start to say, hey, that patter music, I want to hear that, they're identifying the music with the choreography, and that is a goal that is up here. Very few callers actually reach that goal. Who sent me? Was that you, Brian?
Yes, it was, Mel. I remember when I started dancing, the caller only had one hoedown record, and we used to use that all night, every night. And it's got to the stage now where I use quite a variety of music, and I've got several dancers that will come up to me and they say, well, you do such and such a hoedown tonight. They don't care what I call to it. They just like the music.
Yep. And that's really what you want, because it doesn't have that overwhelming melody line, but they identify with it. And it's there, and it sets the theme for what you want. I don't have any questions that I saw in the chat, so by all means, has anybody got any comments, questions? And then we'll start looking at some how to tie some choreography in. It was that good, was it?
Mel, Terry
Yes,
here.
Terry.
A long time ago, one of my caller instructors told me that I needed to make sure my patter record didn't sound exactly the same as my singing call.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There are a lot of callers, and I do it myself. I use a lot of singing call records as patter records. I don't use all, but there are some singing call records which are exceptional patter records. There is a theming that you can have to tie patter calls and singing calls together. But if you're going to call a song, and for instance, there's a lot of pattern music that has gospel music. So Hallelujah, I'm Ready to Go has that theme, and you do Hallelujah, I'm Ready to Go as a singing call, or dancers are going to think you've got one piece of music going. It doesn't work. You want to have that connection, but you want to have that contrast, because that gives you the feeling of doing something familiar but different. Daryl Clendenin puts it very, very succinctly. He says, different, not difficult. The same thing applies to your music. You want just a little bit of different, but familiar, not difficult. And it's an excellent comment, Terry. You want to have that difference so the dancers can actually identify what is a pattern. Their focus is on choreography. What is a singing call? Their focus is on relaxing and enjoying the music. The choreography should already work, and they should already be able to do it. You've proven that in the pattern. That's my opinion anyway. Any comments, questions, queries, points?
Yes, I was just actually writing a little thing here for everybody. I don't use very many singing call records at all as patters. I don't particularly like dancing to a singing call record if the caller is using it as a patter. I think they each have their own particular use. And I think patter records are for patters and singing calls are for singing calls. I mean, I know other callers do use quite a lot of singing call records, and that's their choice, I guess. So, but this is just my personal choice. I don't especially like using a singing call record, especially if it's got a very well-known melody to it, you know, like Somewhere Over the Rainbow or something like that. I wouldn't use as a patter.
Mm-hmm. And I would agree with you. I do use some singing call records as a patter. I don't use those records as singing calls. And the key point that I would take away, if you've got a singing call that has a singing call that has a really strong melody line, like Somewhere Over the Rainbow, or any of those that really, really go and they will draw, and you're focused on the melody line, that will distract you as a caller from getting the proper patter delivery. And it'll also distract the dancers because the phrasing of the music says, I want to end here. And if you're into and your dreams that you dream really do, I can't even, I've lost the tune now, you know what I mean. In Somewhere Over the Rainbow, the dreams that you dream really do come true. You hit that, the dancers are going to start singing that. They're going to want to promenade, or they're going to want to do something, and suddenly you're calling touch a quarter slide through. Whoops, what is that? Who's doing what, where? They lose it. Don't have something that overshadows.
Somewhere Over the Rainbow is a good example because it was produced as a patter record. So would you use that one? I came in late, Ed. I came in late to this, so I have no idea what you talked about. I was right at your summary when I got in the
Okay.
chat.
Yeah, what the comment was, so I made the comment, I use it, and some callers do use singing calls as patter records. Brian said that he doesn't, and that's great because
No, I heard that comment.
a lot of singing calls have that. I would personally not use any singing call that has a very strong dominant melody line that is popular on the melody line, because the dancers will identify that and want to dance with it.
That's
and it
not my
distracts.
question. I heard that comment. I came in right after you concluded and started asking for open session, but
sorry, I misunderstood your question.
There is a Somewhere Over the Rainbow patter record out there.
Yeah.
What about using that as opposed to Somewhere Over the Rainbow that's designed as a singer?
I think what you'll find is the patter record for Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Let me just check, see if I can find it here. Where are we here? Music, lyrics, cue sheet.
Quite a lot of singing calls have been converted to patter records. Like I know quite a lot of the record companies will release a singing call and then they'll release a patter, which is actually the same music with the melody taken out.
Yes, I do.
Okay, so this is Somewhere Over the Rainbow, which was released as a patter record. I'm hoping you can hear this.
Not yet.
Is that coming through?
Nope.
You need to share it and then share the sound and it'll come through our computer.
Sounds like you're in a bathtub.
Sounds like the people next door having a party.
Okay, that's not coming through, is it?
No.
Not every part.
All you need to do is share your music screen, whatever you're playing your music on, and down the bottom left-hand corner is a box that says share sound, and it'll come through.
Okay, what I'm playing the music on is the same computer I'm doing the Zoom on.
No, the program I'm talking about, whatever it is, whatever the program is.
That's off CedarNet. Okay, because now I'll try and describe it. The select a microphone to always use original sound. Okay, original sound, microphone, ATR, original sound on. Let's try this one more time and see if this works. I'll just bring this a little closer.
Well, the singing call version is on Chaparral.
Yeah, there's a number of different versions of Somewhere Over the Rainbow.
On Riverboat also.
Okay.
Did that come through?
Loud.
It came through loudly. Okay. Sorry, I turned the volume up on the other side of the room, so it was, okay. But that's the patter version, which is on Yayoko. It has a strong melody line, but it's dominated by that boom chuck beat all the way through, which goes through. Now you can use that. I personally would not. I don't like that as a patter because the melody line is very, very dominant in that, and it distracts. Whereas if you look at the singing call version of that, I use Chaparral because that's the most common one. So that goes like this. Is that coming through okay?
Yeah, we can hear it.
Okay, Okay, now that's got harmony on it. But now listen to that. Listen to the patter version and listen to the rhythm beat that goes behind it. And this is constant through the whole record. Hear that beat in that rhythm, how it's very dominant through it, whereas in the Chaparral and a couple in the Riverboat whereas I haven't got the Riverboat version. Oh yes, I do. Here it is. No, I don't have the music for it. But generally you'll find that the singing call versions will have a stronger melody line, and the rhythm beat is there as a supporting instrument for the song. Whereas in the patter version, what you've got is the rhythm is the dominant and it places through it. On the instrumental version of the patter, you've got a single instrument guitar doing lead, everything else is rhythm, and everything else is drum. And that doesn't change. I personally don't like it as that because it's still a very dominant, recognizable song. But that's just me. There are some that I will use. When I talk about theming, did that answer your question on the Somewhere Over the Rainbow, Mike? I think there you are.
I didn't really get a yes or no out of it. I just got a comparison of the two kinds of music. With one has beat, boom chuck beat, the other doesn't. But I mean, if it's specifically designed as a patter, what's wrong with that?
There's nothing wrong with it if you're able to deliver that. There's absolutely nothing wrong, and if the dancers like it, I would not use that regularly as a patter. I might use it if I was inclined and there was a theme that was going, but I personally wouldn't use. This is just my opinion. I wouldn't use that song because the melody line is way too dominant on that song, and the phrasing is too specific.
I agree. It's dominant. Yeah.
Yeah. I have used singing calls as patter though, but they have a very, very soft, they've got a stronger beat and a softer melody line. Mickey, is that your hand up?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think there is no right or wrong. It's either like or dislike. It's just like a taste. Some people like jelly on peanut butter, others don't. I think as long as we're talking about technical type things like choreo and patter, body flow and hand availability, smoothness, there is where we talk about right or wrong to the most extent. But the other thing is a part of art. And with art, there is no right or wrong. It's like or dislike. And whatever your dancers will applaud you, you see whether you get their taste and their feeling. And we're talking about music, which also transports feelings. And I think if you can transport the feelings, then you've done it right. Okay, talking about the music and about the art part.
Yeah, and I agree with you 100%. Caller judgment is one of the things. I'm going to actually have Jeff Priest coming up to do a whole session on caller judgment on the 12th of October, I believe. But when we look at it, the music itself is a platform. It's a foundation to build either your patter or your singing call. Singing call music, it's much easier to build on that platform because it's usually rigid, it's usually structured, and it's fixed. Patter music is not. It allows the caller to build the platform with the choreography and to use the music as a platform to solidify that choreography. It's taking all the ingredients and making the cake. You're absolutely correct. There is no right or wrong. It is a judgment on that. My personal opinion is you have to be very cautious using singing call music or downloaded popular music as patter music because some of it will dominate and it can mislead the dancers and it can mislead the callers. Those that can do it effectively, I applaud you. I have a lot of trouble doing it, but some callers can do it. Brian, you've got your hand up?
Yes, Mel, I don't think it matters what music you use as long as you present it well and as long as it suits the occasion.
Absolutely. And for me, I talk about music when I say music for a tip. Music for a tip is two completely different songs. But the one that's remembered is generally the patter. And they both have to be presented well. If I play something like this, let's try this. So hopefully you can hear this. Can you hear that okay? Okay, now that is generally very recognizable. That's the baby elephant walk. It's been used in a lot of things. It doesn't really have lyrics, but it's a very, very common tune. I would use that as a patter. Okay. I wouldn't use it often as a patter, but I would use it occasionally as a patter because that's one of those tunes that would be remembered. If I was going to use that as a patter, I'd probably have something soft and good as my singing call, but the dancers may not always remember that. You know, I might do Honeysuckle Rose or Home on the Range or I'm Ready to Go or something like that, which has got that lift and carriage, but it's a float because the emphasis in the music was on the patter. That carried me through. You'll remember that tune. You're not going to remember the singing call as much, but the singing call is what's going to be the last thing left with you, and it's what's going to make that whole package a memory. So if I did Heaven in My Woman's Eyes or Home on the Range at the end of it, you'll all sing Home on the Range, you'll remember that, but that patter feeling will be carried through by the singing call. And that's generally what happens. Okay, I've got a couple of examples here, so I'm just going to share my screen of what I was talking about. Okay, so here's an example of theming that we're talking about. So if I look at, this is the patter record Moonshine. Okay, and it generally goes like that throughout the whole record. Now you noticed on that, okay, I had a theme movement, wheel around. I've got my modular choreography for quick refresh at a glance on the other side. I know I want to focus on wheel around. If I need to have a zero module, I can just quickly glance. I can see that zero module come up on the screen, or I can just call to the dancers and set up things and use a lot of wheel arounds. I've also got two singing call figures that I've prepared and practiced for that. That song's called Moonshine, part of a Halloween type theme. And the singing call I put with it, Neon Moon. Now there's a tie both in the title of the song, the theme of the music, and the reason for it. And Neon Moon, when I put that on, notice the difference between the music? Soft and gentle, whereas Moonshine as a patter was a good driving, not a really hard melody line, just a funky beat. But that's a very relaxing singing call that the dancers will remember. They probably won't remember the tune. They probably won't go away singing that tune because it's new, it's common, it's popular, but it's not one that you want really sing all the time. But the choreography is reflective of what I did in the patter. I used wheel around, I used the wheel around, got a half sachet with the boys in front and a pass the ocean, you know, just something a little different but not difficult that the dancers can do. And one of these figures is easier than the other one. If we're theming steel rails, okay, so steel rails, what does that remind you of?
Trains.
Trains. So the associated singing call to that, I used all aboard. So if you listen to that pattern, deep bow to the partner, corner two, head square through when I get four hands and move it. Do it outside out, swing through. And if I want, I've got, again, some prepared modules, 2 singing calls. Listen to the beat of that. It's got a gentle melody line. It's got a really good beat. And that's a classic example because I chose that one specifically. That's actually a singing call record. I do not use that as a singing call. I have never used that as a singing call because it's a brilliant patter record. Some callers do it as a singing call, but I've never used it as that. And the singing call that I do with that all aboard. And for those of you that know that, that's a medley of train songs, very popular, and a lot of dancers love that song. They love to sing that song. They love to go with that song. And it fits. Those two things tie together. The choreography ties together. When I talked about melody lines, some patter records have songs that do not really have a focused melody line or are really, really weird. This goes back, where is she? You asked the question about complementing the music to the actual singing call. Should you use the same music or the same type of music? So listen to this music. Very dominant, very repetitive. But what's it actually doing there? Head square through and I get four hands and go. Find the corner, touch 1/4, split circulate, scoot back, do a walking dodge, partner trade and a right or left through. Slide through to the corner, I'm a man left your corner, do the right or left grand. So it's got intonations, but it's very strong, it's very dominant, but it's got very short clips of melody line that all fit well together. But there's no real song or tune in that. So with that, I use this one, or I chose this one, Will It Go Round in Circles. And a lot of callers like to use this as a patter call. I don't. I love the song. I love that song. But there's an example of using two things that don't really have a strong. Each one of them has a short beat melody line on an 8-beat phrase. They've got a 16-beat theme, and then they change it with a womp womp. It ties those two things together, even though they're the same type and style of the music. I would use that as a pickup after a slow workshop or a workshop. That's to really pick the energy of the evening up. And you can do it with two songs and modify your choreography. The choreography I would use on that would be fairly simple. And as you saw with the singing call, you know, that's got a left scoot back, or this is a scoot back focus. Very simple choreography that works. And, you know, most callers and most experienced callers will do this with their choreography, with their musical structure. They'll pick a singing call figure, practice that. This is what I want to look at. And they'll pick a patter call and say, no, I don't want that. I'll choose another one. A lot of callers have said they do this, but they don't explain why they do it. The reason they do it is because it works and the dancers enjoy it. It works for them and it sets the mood and the pace for a whole evening structure to build. So please, we've got a lot of very experienced callers here. Please chip in. Bob, Brian, Howard, you do a lot of this. You were doing a lot of this at the halfway dance as far as the theme goes. And that was a multi-caller dance, which was very, very difficult to achieve that, working with other callers. But the patter record was there. It followed with a singing call record. And in a lot of cases, 2 singing calls, patter, singing call. This kind of stuff is done a lot. And a lot of callers that are really, really good aren't even aware of why or how they do it. They just do it because it's a natural instinct. It's what's right. Yes, Bob.
One of the things that I do, I do have used a lot of patters that are singing calls for patter records. In fact, on the month of December, it's almost all, because once Thanksgiving's over, I just do Christmas songs till the New Year's. And that's what I do. And I do a Christmas song for the patter and a Christmas song for a singer. And dancers just come up and tell me they love the evening. It's not the common thing where a caller shows up for a Christmas dance and does one Christmas song for the whole evening as a token. Yeah, I'm really into Christmas. One year I left my Christmas tree up for a whole year. So how I am.
I usually go with decorated trees, and when I lived in Canada, I found that around we had Christmas in our house around the 28th, 29th, because it was a lot easier to go out to the snowbank and you'd see all these trees that are already decorated with tinsel. You could just pick up one that was still good and take it home with you.
But I do that. I remember, so many different things that you were discussing. I remember a Chaparral weekend, which was the ultimate top callers. They did a weekend only using one patter record. It was Gypsy Feet when they hadn't released it yet. And I guess they were trying to decide who was going to actually do the vocal patter on it. And I never will forget, one weekend, one patter record for every 10. Same music. I couldn't believe they did that.
I have heard of that. I've heard of callers that have come and they had to actually borrow a patter record for whatever reason. They had their singing calls, but they had them all separate. Their patter records got lost. They borrowed a patter record. There was another where there was only 3 pieces of music used for 3 pieces of patter music used for the whole tip. Callers noticed it. Dancers didn't. The delivery, the timing, everything else is different. And this is what I'm saying. A really good piece of patter music, if you're asked to do a patter music, as Brian was saying, he's got something that happens. I get asked for Baby Elephant Walk, and I'll tell you right now, my delivery on Baby Elephant Walk, and Jeff, I think you could probably attest to this because I did it down in Adelaide. It's a beautiful song, but my delivery as a caller with that song was average, I would say. The choreography was fine, but my delivery was not the best. But that's a tune that was asked for. So I did it. The dancers loved it, but they loved it because of the song. The choreography I chose was very simple, and I used modular calling because I was not comfortable with that record. But it's just the way that people do. And there are records like that you get.
And
go ahead.
There's some songs, like I remember TNT had Row, Row, Row. And that sold as a patter record. Everybody loved it. And it's songs that are could be used as around, row, row, row your boat, and then the other comes in.
Yeah.
There's certain
Bob, you're gonna have to you have to stay by your microphone because when you lean away, you
Yeah,
drift off.
I have trouble hearing him at all.
Okay. There's some songs like row your boat that's around. So you row, row, row your boat, and then somebody can start at the end of the phrase and come in with the same song. There are songs that have that kind of a natural feel, and those are very easily used as patter records. I use songs that I don't. Oh my gosh, something happened there. Anyway, I use songs for patterns that I'm not going to perform there, but just as an exercise to see if I can call patter to it and to train myself to follow the melody with my voice. If you take half the callers, at least probably 80% of the callers in the country, and record them in stereo, music on one channel and voice on the other, and then play the patter without music. It's head square through, four hands, do, sa, do, and when you're done, swing through, spin the top and a right or left through. There's absolutely nothing musical about their delivery of their patter. I know because I recorded a Golden State Roundup session, and for some reason I got it in stereo, and I played these callers, and I went, "Oh my God!" You know, it's not like the old days where you used phrasing in music to do your patter. And I wish we had more of that. Now, anybody who can read a script can call a patter.
I was just seeing if I had one of those that was recorded with just the patter without the music in a WAV file, but no, I don't.
Hey, Mel, I have one song that I use as a patter record called Sunshine in Summertime. And it comes into a hang on Snoopy, and I have written my choreography where I come into that part for the right and left grand so that the dancers can sing that part of it, even though it's a patter record. But you have to have your timing just perfect to make it work, to hit that line just when you right and left grand. Hang on, Snoopy, Snoopy, hang on. So that just works. It takes work. It takes a lot of work.
Yeah. Deborah Parnell Jones was using for patter something to the classics, where it was a series of classic songs, and she had her delivery such as when it hit the what's it called? I made the patter of it. The Lone Ranger, the
William Tell Overture.
The William Tell Overture.
And when that hit that William Tell Overture, she hit her right and left grand and just brought the house down. It was fantastic. So you can do that with music.
Yeah, she has her showmanship down pat. I'm telling you.
Yes.
That's on your label, isn't it?
Well, the Lone Ranger is. That's not what I'm referring to. She was using Hooked on the Classics.
Right.
She was using Hooked on the Classics as a patter.
Yeah. I haven't got that, but you mentioned row, row, row your boat. Round that
no, just row, row. And two different songs.
That was on TNT, was it?
Yes.
Okay, so that's this one. Hang on.
That's it.
Oh.
So that's row, row, row. That was I think you did a version of that too, didn't you, Brian?
No, no.
You've got one.
I've got the
on
I've got
Gren.
the I've got the record, but I don't use it as a patter.
No, I thought you recorded.
Oh,
row, row,
on
row.
Gren, yes, I think I did. I think I did. Yes.
That's going back a while, but yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it's a brilliant. That would make a very nice patter. I would personally use that more as a patter than I would as a singing call, because the way the melody lines flow in and follow on that.
And it's phrase. I mean, the phrasing is fantastic. It's a boom on the one beat, you know, and then it lets you know when the phrase is over at 8.
But what I really like about it is, if I was calling patter to that, you can do short routines. You can pick that up in the middle. You can pick that up on the end. Regardless of what your choreography is, that downbeat is going to match the dancing beat of wherever the dancers are. It's one of those, it forces them to actually work with the beat of the music, which is really, really nice. And because the melody line is consistent but not dominating in a song, it's a flow that will lend itself to use as pattern music. What I would not do would be use row, row, row as the patter and then use row, row, row as the singing call.
Oh.
But I have heard some callers do that. I think Tony Oxendine did that once at a caller school, very, very successfully. I am nowhere able to pull that off the same as he did, because if I was doing that, I would probably switch to the lyrics of the song in my patter and totally destroy my emphasis of the show with the singing call.
There are some of the singing calls that we use as patters. Like I use things like Mountain Dew and things like that. And it's interesting sometimes if you can hit the phrase properly, you can call grand square and then just for 32 beats sing the lyrics of the song and then back into your patter again.
Yes.
Yep.
Or what's really cool is if you can get the last 64, you just do the opener of the song and just do a one-time through, one part of the singing call and sing as an outro to your pattern.
One of the things that I have found a lot of, sure. You've got that, you've got and this one. Now, all three of those have very dominant melody lines. All three of those lend themselves to patter. And all three of those are singing calls. What you'll find is a lot of music, we did this, if you look at a lot of music that has come out in the patter era, you'll find most of them, you can find 3 or 4, if they're the right type of music, 3 or 4 different melody lines from gospel music in the actual patter itself. It's definitely worth having a look through your patter and just trying to pick out tunes. And you'll see the same thing if you get some of the singing calls that are just the old-time gospel. The tunes for the old-time gospel have very little variation in them, but the background harmonics and the background rhythm are the same as other gospel music. The theory that I want somebody to release the song Twinkle Twinkle Little Star and have it overlaid with the ABC song and have it overlaid with, what's the other one? Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, the ABC, and there's 3 of them songs. 3 of those songs, it's the same tune that goes through them.
melody.
Sounds like something for Bob Elling to do.
I've already done the music.
I know. That's why I said.
I mean, when you think about
Because
it,
you've got some Thanksgiving lyrics to Twinkle Twinkle Little Star called Little Pilgrim, which is about the only Thanksgiving song I've actually been able to find and use.
Mhm.
Yeah,
You got
that's 3 songs you could do there. But you know the 4th one, right? No.
well. How about this one? What was it? Yeah, Baba Black Sheep, Little Pilgrim, Baba Black Sheep, Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, and ABCD. Now, when you think about it, you got Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, da 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 da, A B C D E F G, da 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 da.
Little pilgrim dressed in brown.
Little pilgrim dressed in brown. Da, 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 da. And the only real difference is in the second down phrase, like Baba Black Sheep. Baba Black Sheep, have you any wool? Yes, sir, 3 bags full. Da, 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 da. Where Twinkle Twinkle is Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. It's just the rhythm. That's really the only differences in those songs. And a lot of pattern music, especially the gospel music, has those hidden. So you can do Hallelujah, you can do I'm Ready, you can do Joy to the World, you can do all of those kinds of things. You'll pick those little bits of trailers up in your music. Those are tools that you can use as a caller. In pattern music, it's really, really good because you can really play with the dancers on that.
Sounds like you're trying to do an audition for play school there, Mel.
Yes, or Romper Room with everybody here on the Romper Room calendar.
Right. I was just thinking of a good way there's several pieces of singing calls that actually have an instrumental break for the sides, face, grand, square in the middle. And you could tie those with pattern records that have breaks for you to sing. And I think that would be a little nuanced thing that you could do one night.
Yep.
Have the singing calls match up with the pattern records. The pattern records you get to sing, and the singing calls you just get to listen to the music.
Guido put a comment in there when I was talking about musical theming. I used Moonshine and Neon Moon. You can do that as well. He's put a great comment in there. Mountain Dew would also team up with Moonshine. And there's a record, which is actually the first record that was given me by Dave Prescott, was Thunder Road. You know, how you theme your music is very, very important. As long as you can tie it together, your dancers are going to have success. And that's what it's all about, is creating that, not the success of getting through the pattern. That has its own rewards. Not the memory of the singing call, but the singing call as a mnemonic for a remembrance of a feeling of a whole collective activity. And when you have that whole package being remembered as a positive thing, one singing call can make an entire evening, because the dancers will take that away with them. Most callers will take one of those memorable singing calls right at the end of the evening, or the second last song of the evening. So it's carried through, and that's what the dancers are being left with. And if you have even an average choreographic program that's danceable and smooth, and you get that wonderful feeling at the end, what you've done is you've created... How many people eat fruitcake? How many people enjoy weddings? You get a fruitcake at a wedding, the decoration on that fruitcake is wonderful. The fruitcake itself, 99% of the time, is absolute crap. I don't like fruitcake. But what you remember is the visual of that wedding cake, the experience and the ambiance of what went around that, and the memory. And guess what? Everybody remembers the cutting of the cake, and, you know, smooshing the bride smooshing the cake in the groom's face, and vice versa. And then you get that little piece of cut out fruitcake that goes into your fridge with the ribbon on and it's stuck in the freezer for, for 35,000 years. You pull it out, and regardless of when you pull that out with that little ribbon, you're going to remember the experience of that piece of fruitcake and the icing. It has nothing to do with the cake. It has to do with the memory. And that's what your singing calls and your patter calls tied together will do. They'll create that memory that's going to carry you through and bring you back to the dance.
I occasionally have dancers tell me not to do a particular singing call at the end of the night. And I say, why don't you want me to do that? And they say, because we can't get the tune out of our heads after we leave the hall. Well, that's really what you want.
Yeah.
We have a word for that in German. Ohrwurm, earworm.
Earworm.
Yes,
Yeah, it's the same word. The same word in English.
Yeah, it was coming to English from the German.
There's oh God, I wish I could remember who it was. It was a caller who said this. It's an older song, but there was very, very familiar cowboy songs that he used to call to. And what he would do is he would start it. And the reality is you need to have completion of a song to get rid of it. So if you've got an earworm, you basically have to finish that song to get it out of your head. And he would deliberately cut off the last phrase of the song at the end of the evening and thank everybody. He would never finish that song. And it used to drive people crazy, but they would always remember it and they'd always come back because they always left with, oh, he's got to finish that song. He's got to finish that song.
Would that be Happy Trails, maybe?
He could finish the song at the next club night, just in the beginning. just play the last phrase and finish it.
At the beginning of this session, we were talking about tying the music together. Like we opened up at about 7 here, and we were looking at different choreography. I posted that in the chat, but we were basically looking at picking a theme, developing a singing call around it, and then writing your choreography. And you probably saw on some of these music sheets that I had up here. Whoops. Where are we here? A lot of these things were done just like that. Okay, so this was a focus on circle to align. And it has a very easy one. So I did the 3/4 thing, circle 4 3/4, not circle to align, the circle 4 or circle to align. And that was the theme of this particular tip. And where I was looking at was this circle to align where you've got one couple half sashayed. So you've got a girl, boy, boy, girl. Boys together, girls together. To circle line, you end up in a girl, boy, boy, girl line. The pattern that we had, the choreography that we had, in this particular one, I had a couple of get-ins, partner line to corner box conversions, and corner box, corner box, corner box, 0 modules. So we play with a lot of stuff like this at the beginning. But this is also important. It's also one of the reasons why I say the easiest way to tie your patter choreography to your singing choreography is do the singing call first. In this particular one, it was unusual choreography, so I used a record that's got a good beat, not overwhelming. I used Baroque hoedown, but because of the choreo, I finished this with Heaven in My Woman's Eyes, which is a nice gentle song that I could use the choreography on. But as you go through that, you can play with the material. You can develop your choreography around your singing calls. There's a lot of callers out there. It's not wrong, but it really curbs their flexibility, is they tie themselves to whatever the lyrics of the song, whatever the choreography of the song when it comes out, that's what they tie themselves to. And so for new callers teaching a class, they're busy scouring the record labels to find something that's got a clover leaf in it that doesn't have a movement that I haven't taught yet. And they're trying to structure their dances accordingly. You don't want to do that. Develop your choreography, do your singing calls, set them up. If it's complex, set it up so you do your swing at 40 beats or 38 beats. It gives them an extra couple of beats. If it's a real driver, you want it to match. Set your 48 beat promenade in the right hand, you know, number one man is in the number one lady position for the swing or whatever, so that you've got that flow and you've got that constant movement. But do your singing call first, then your patter choreography. And it's important that even if you're a sight caller, you can see it in your mind, practice your choreography for your patter using the focus that you're going to use on the tip. That is a very important thing to do, because that will cement it in your mind. It'll make you more comfortable and confident. And when you're confident, it comes through the mic. When it comes through the mic, the dancers are confident in your ability. Even if it goes wrong, they'll be confident that you did it right, even if they made a mistake and it was your mistake. It's a good way to hide. Don't do it often, though. You leaving us, Terry? So,
She's gone.
anybody have any more comments, questions, queries? Anybody want to look at anything? If you wanted to look at choreography or pick a move, we could start looking at some singing call development and then take it from there.
Boy, on Zoom is not so nice.
Yeah, these were there's a few of them. That's after an all 8 circulate boys run
Right.
Zoom.
Mel, one of the things that I've looked at when I've been buying my hoedowns is to get hoedowns with good 4-beat phrasing, with instruments that will play well through a subwoofer. And you'll find that the dancers step to the beat of the music more regularly, and it's good for in classes when you're teaching, especially early on.
Yeah, one of the important things, and Bob could probably speak on this a little more, is regardless, you can have either a 4 or an 8-beat phrasing in your patter call. You want to have it a multiple of 4, whatever it is. You can have a very soft, no drum, no bass, as long as you've got a good, solid rhythm. There's a lot of songs out there which are just a melody line, but they're on that 4-bar beat rhythm, which really work well. That's when you're really, really experienced and you've got good dancers and you want a real mood setter. Generally, you want a good, strong rhythm and a good, strong beat that's developed and defined, either with a drum, a snare, or a bass guitar to set that boom, 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 boom. And the melody line will be your off the cue and your chuck. So boom, boom, boom with diddly, 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 flowing through it. If you get songs like that, you can do anything you want with them. That's the beauty of them. They are so flexible in patter calls. Excellent comment, John. Yes, Mickey.
Yeah, I'd like to have 1 or 2 comments on the singing calls. There are some singing calls which I, being on stage with other callers, ask them, continue whatever happens. And there are some singing calls arranged that way, musical wise, with the cadence and the melody, that you can do another song on it. Like on Down in the Boondocks, you can go Next Door to Alice. Yeah. Or Steel Rails and I Believe in Music. And if you ever have the chance to listen to the British ukulele orchestra from London, they have one thing in there which is called Fly Me of Handel, where they argue with the ukulele. They sing as well which song they're going to do next, and one goes up, we're going to do a classic one with Handel, and he starts playing, all the others go no, and you have about 6 different songs. They're singing on exactly the same cadences and a piece of music, and then they all sing it together. It makes you crazy, but it's so cool. It's a song like Fly Me to the Moon, I Will Survive, California,
Dreaming.
What? No, the other California, we got to do it. there are a couple of songs. Hotel California is the song, yeah. And you think they would never fit together, and you could sing them within one piece of music. It's great, and this inspires you. And I've picked some of the singing calls to do the songs as well, but not every singing call is that way arranged with a melody line that you could do it. So sometimes the less you have in the piece of music, in the instrumental, the more versatile you are and can use it for such gimmick type things. But it's very interesting. If you listen to the ukulele orchestra, Fly Me Off Handle is the title, but they've got a couple of such numbers, acts in there, then you would understand what I mean. Yeah. And from a musical side, an entertaining side, this is really great. Yeah. To also inspire us callers.
Muted myself. You reminded me of something. I've seen callers that do this, and they'll actually do two songs at the same time in harmony. You see this a lot in music. When I was talking about rhythm and melody lines and chords, I just want to play this for you. It's a short clip, but it talks about music. So I'm just going to share this screen if I can. And hopefully that you guys all be able to hear this.
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear it?
It's dead simple to write a pop hit.
Can you hear that?
Yeah, these four. Here. 1, 2, 3, 4 chords. Sorry, let me get it.
So those 4 chords in that order. Now just listen.
Do you recognize this?
Yeah, that is Don't Stop Believing by You can take those 4 chords, repeat them, and pump out every pop song ever. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Fuck off. Yeah, fuck off.
Excuse the language, sorry. Forgot about that.
Just listen. Do you recognize this?
Yeah, that is Don't Stop Believing by Journey. Great song. Very original.
There's a few more that fit. Check it out.
My life is brilliant, my love is pure. I saw an angel, of that I'm sure.
Well, that's just 2 songs that are similar. That's
Forever young,
3
I
songs.
wanna be forever young. I won't hesitate no more. It cannot wait. I'm yours. This is the way you left me. I'm not pretending. No love, no hope, no glory, no happy ending. 'Cause you were amazing. We did amazing.
These are all different songs.
If I could, then I would. I'd go wherever you will go.
Same 4 chords repeated, same rhythm.
Yes, you will be loved. Pictures of you, pictures of me, hung upon your wall for the world to see. 'Cause I can't live without you. When I fall at your feet, you let your tears.
Am I not pretty enough? Is my heart too Double time?
Double time.
When I found myself in times of trouble, Mother Mary comes to me.
That guy was a Credence caller.
That's the way it's gonna be, little darling.
These are still the same 4 chords, same order. All they've done is pick up the tempo.
Surely it's a dream.
I come from a land down under.
Once a jolly swagman kept my take on me.
So I think you get the idea of that's actually go away. That's the axis of awesome. But that says a lot about the music, and that's a lot about the music that we use. All of those are very, very popular songs that we're going through. They're all pop songs. They're all big, big hits, and every one of them used 4 chords and the same rhythm structure. What the difference was the melody line. And if you take that thought alone and you look at most of the music that we use for square dancing, 124 to 130 beats per minute, 2/4 or 4/4 time, same lyrical structure, same general chord structure that is repeated through almost everything. The only thing different is the melody line, and you can do so much with that. And as Mickey was saying, it's not impossible to get something when they have a softer melody line to do 2, sometimes even 3 songs at the same time. Play with the music, study your music, and you'll find all these little nuances.
Once upon a time, Shelby Dawson released a song or a piece of music, and he put out a cue sheet or 4 cue sheets. You could do any one of 4 different songs to that piece of music because he was just playing chords.
Yep.
He already passed away, but we did have an American caller in Germany, John Chauvin, or John Chauvin. It depends how you pronounce it in English or French. He could do an entire weekend, or he went to a caller school for 5 days with just 5 records. And he told the participants there, well, everything you have, I have. And he only used 5 records for an entire week.
Yeah, I've heard of that from a few people.
That's kind of how I taught myself to do patter, in a sense, was that I would take and sing the wrong song to a different piece of music and just learn timing that way. That's how I taught myself good timing, was that I could use, no matter what it was, I could put it into another song and do the same thing.
Yep.
In fact,
You're fading, Bob.
When I get 1, 2, 3, when I get an idea to do a new song, I will just take the lyrics and put it to a different song and see if it works.
Yep.
There's quite a few patterns that we have that you can that don't seem to have any particular melody. They've just got a good chord pattern, and you can call almost any singing call to them.
Yes, yep. I produce a lot of those, but I make them 9 times through instead of 7. That's all.
Yeah, I think Sets in Order many years ago put out 2 records. They called one of them was called Chords Galore, and the other one was called More Chords, that you could call a number of different singing calls to.
Yeah, one of the common ones in square dancing is Chaparral's "Play Me Some Rag." It's a great one for duet.
Is that on Chaparral or on Chinook?
I thought it was on Chinook.
That was on Chinook, but that's only one song. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Irving Berlin wrote it that way. And if you want to hear the original, go to search for Bing Crosby.
Yes, Bing and Gary.
Yeah, Gary was his son.
Yes,
or is, or whatever. I don't think he changed that status.
No. Mel, when you were talking about the different sorts of rhythms, you mentioned 2/4 and 4/4 rhythm. There's another one that I particularly like, and that's 6/8, which is really good for square dancing.
Yes.
Brian, but that's actually just a 2/4 for dancers. Because they go on the da, and their feet are silent on the da. They go on the next da.
It's actually waltz rhythm, very fast. 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2.
Yeah.
I don't know whether
they only dance on the ones.
I'm not sure whether this will come through or not. I've never tried playing music on a Zoom session, but this is one that I use that's a 6/8 rhythm. It's a little Irish thing.
You
Is that coming through?
Yeah.
Yep. And so that's a 6/8 rhythm.
Yeah, but if you listen to the drum, it's just on the one on each segment.
All right,
It's
I'm
just
muted. Play that again, Brian.
What's the name?
Lord of the Dance.
I just got to
Oh,
call
I thought, okay.
Irish jig. I just call it Irish jig.
Yeah, that particular tune is Lord of the Dance. But listen to the beats on this.
Really, really good to dance to.
And
it's
you
a medley.
can fit that. Most of the Irish folk will have that kind of a melodic line in it. So you can do a jig, you can do a polka, you can do a reel, you can do a waltz, or you can do just a two-step to it. They lean themselves to all sorts of different rhythms.
It's a kind of a happy, bouncy marching type thing, which you want to move along, and I think that fits very good. Yeah.
Like there's two songs, Smoky Mountain Dew and what was it, Dixie Rhythm, are like that as well. Even though they got the banjos and the fiddles, they've got really, really good melody lines. They're in 2/4, but the melody line, not melody, rhythm lines, the different rhythms that they do with the instrumental, but rather than take the beat, they make the rhythms with different instruments, and it gives it a whole new flow and feel to the actual music.
When I first started calling back in the 70s, I had a Jimmy Shand LP, and every track on that LP was able to be used for hoedown. They were absolute terrific 4/4 time, or as Brian said, 6/8 time.
Yes, yes. Jimmy Shand put out some great music. Yes.
Well, that.
Go ahead. I'm just looking for one that I put out. This is one of the singing calls that I put out on my label, which is a 6/8 rhythm. And once again, it's an Irish song. It's called Pretty Little Girl from Omagh. Men star with the right, you know. Once around the ring you go. Alaman up with the corner and weave her round the ring. She wears my ring, tells my friends I'm gonna marry me. Swing and whirl the pretty little girl and promenade you see. I don't know what you done to me. She's the only girl my eyes can see. My pretty little girl from Omagh in the county of Tyrone. It's a really, really nice little rhythm from Daniel O'Donnell, I think, is the one that sings that a lot.
I think so. Girl from Omagh.
Yeah, anyhow, I just thought I'd share those.
Not Omaha, Omagh.
Omagh, yeah.
It's a singing call on Riverboat.
That one? No, that's on my label, B bar H.
I've got a hoedown that I actually got because I heard it on one of Brian's recordings, and it's called Quando Hoedown. A brilliant one for teaching.
Let me have a second here.
It's Riverboat 1093, but it's also on B bar H. I think that's 2006, 2006.
I think so. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Brian's done it, and oh God, was it? What's his name? O'Leary.
Jack O'Leary?
Jack O'Leary. Yeah. I think he did that on Riverboat a long time ago.
Oh, right. Okay.
I like two things I love: Christmas music and Irish music. And all
Me
other
too.
kinds, but they're very.
I love Irish folk. I love singing Irish folk. I love dancing to Irish folk. Unfortunately, I love to sing in a raised B flat, and very little music is recorded in that range. So
Yeah, we got one coming out this month. The Ghost of Danny Boy. It's a good little.
I found out that I actually sing in the key of R. I don't know if anybody else sings in the key of R. It's sort of halfway between B flat and B awful.
Oh, I sing in the key of L. Sounds like L.
Very good.
you need to do Back to Donegal, Bob.
I've really given a lot of consideration. I think I will. Definitely.
But you'll need to have a 64 beat phrase in there, like a grand spin or something for the chorus.
Back to Donegal's been done a number of times. It was done on a Windsor record called Slaunch to Donegal. And then
no, not that one. What's it?
It was done on Top, called Back to Donegal. It was also done on McGregor.
This thing is had many recordings.
Yes.
But I just like the tune, and I will probably do it.
For music producers, the best thing is there is no royalties involved.
Yeah. What's the tune that goes What is that tune?
One more time.
No, don't make him do it again.
It seems like only yesterday I left the port of Cork, and on a ship from Old Erin's Isle, I landed in New York without a friend to meet me there, and a stranger on the shore.
That's Back to Donegal.
Yeah, that is Back to Donegal.
Yeah.
That's the one that you need to get, because the chorus on that is they'll come Lanigan, Flanagan, Milligan, Gilligan, Duffy, Mahaffy, Mahart, Malone, Hafty, Lafty, Donnelly, Connolly, Junimo, Johnny Malone, Shadahan, Ladahan, Flanagan, Hagan, Ool, and Flynn, Tadahan, Ladahan, Hoberty, Foberty, Kelly, O'Kelly, Shapiro, McGinn. Now get that with your patter. That's the one I says that you've got 32 beats, but that is very similar to the Auctioneer or I've Been Everywhere with the 64. Was it 64? No, 8 chain 9. That's right.
Yeah. Well, I could sing the I've Been Everywhere in the regular thing.
Yeah.
And I cannot do the singing call because I cannot leave out the middle two lines of each 6-line chorus.
What you know how you find it easier to do? Start one verse of the natural. So you've got Reno, Chicago, Fargo, Minnesota, Buffalo, Toronto, Winslow, Sarasota, and then stop there. Instead of carrying on, just switch to the next verse. So. And just start that from fresh, because what you've got is your phrasing, but then you've got the extra 2 lines. Instead of dropping 2 out, add 2 in from the next verse. So Louisville, Nashville, Knoxville, Backsheffel, Jacksonville, Waterloo, Costa Rica, Reno, Chicago, Fargo, Minnesota, and you carry on.
Winslow, Sarasota, Wichita. Yeah, I know them.
and that's the only way I could get through that, because I couldn't drop a middle line, so I just added 2 from the previous verse, and it carries over and rolls down.
So did you use the 8 chain 9 figure?
Why not?
Yeah, that's with the 8 chain 9 figure.
Okay. I love that. I love that too.
And there are some singing calls that just lend themselves to be don't mess with them at all. One of them is El Paso City. It is what it is. Don't mess with it.
Yep.
And also Summer Sounds on McGregor.
Summer Sounds is another one. Yeah.
There's actually an Australian singer, a country singer or a ballad singer, that's put I've been everywhere with gardening. I've got to do the gardening, and it's got all the plants you can think of in it.
Well,
Oh.
I've been everywhere is an Australian song from the very first beginning.
The original one was Australian. It was made popular by Hank Snow, but the original was an Australian song.
By the well, I have the album. Later they call themselves the Australians, but before they had a different name. They were a duo.